Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you are with us this morning. Welcome to those of you in the room, and welcome also to those of you joining us via our live stream. If you're chilly back there, you can close that black door and I'll keep the heat in here a little bit more, just to let you know. Before we begin our worship service, we have just a few announcements to share. The Meetinghouse office will be closed on Monday and Wednesday this week, open Tuesday and Thursday from 11 to 2, so please call ahead before coming by. Easter is coming up on April 9th. We hope you will spread the word to friends that all are welcome at our family-friendly Easter worship, and there will be an intergenerational Easter egg hunt after the service. Speaking of which, please consider donating plastic eggs, individually wrapped candy, and tiny prizes that might fit into an egg for our Easter egg hunt. And if you'd like to help the Easter Bunny to fill the eggs, please join us on Thursday, April 6th at 1 o'clock downstairs in Acker-Bosworth Hall. It should be a lot of fun. On Sunday, April 23rd, we will gather on Zoom at 2 o'clock for a congregational vote on the proposed 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism. So in preparation, we hope that you can watch or re-watch the sermon that I gave on this subject back in January. And that service is titled MLK Sunday. And we also sent that out as a link this week to our UUMH folk email list, and we'll send that out again. Now, last week, we talked about the 3-year pandemic anniversary, and that we are all on a journey of recovery from community trauma. And I showed you a graph of the trajectory of trauma and recovery, and I mentioned that in the regeneration, reconstruction stage, there are things that we can do that help that recovery to go well. And one of the things that I listed was to tell our friends and family what is feeling hard and see if they can help. So I have decided to take my own advice today and tell you all something that is feeling hard for me and see if you might be able to help. And it often feels awkward for me as your spiritual leader to put my own needs out there, but ministering is just not a do as I say, not as I do situation. Or it shouldn't be anyway. So one of the things that feels hard for me during this stage of pandemic recovery and rebuilding is our in-person attendance at Sunday services. And it's true that we were always much smaller in the winter than in the summer, usually about half. But before the pandemic, we were averaging about 75 people on winter Sundays. And this year, it's been around 30. And in a big space like ours, it's hard for that not to feel pretty empty. And I'll be honest, it's challenging to preach to and to feel good about. I'm thinking about this for me and for our amazing guest speakers that we have lined up for this spring for my Sundays off. Now, I know that there are many of you living in that camera, and so I appreciate you watching from home, especially those of you who don't live here or who aren't feeling well this week or who can't get to the Meetinghouse or who can't be in crowds. And we have some pretty fabulous Tuesday night coffee hours where I get to see a lot of you on Zoom, and so I know that you are watching and engaged. But on Sunday mornings, I can't see you. So I guess what I'm hoping is that for the next 2 months, until our summer folks return and we have more visitors and snowbirds and such to fill out our pews, I'm hoping that if you are on the fence about watching from home or coming in person, that you will come in person. It would be a great help to me and to the choir and to everyone here to have your energy in the room. There's actually a huge exchange of energy that happens with a room full of people. And we are missing you, and I am missing you. So, thank you. Thank you for letting me name what has been feeling really hard. And those of you who are in person today, thank you. And I hope that you will join us downstairs after the service for coffee and conversation. And my Zoom peeps, I will see you Tuesday night at 5. And everyone, let us know if you need that link for our online coffee hour. All are invited. Let's take a moment now to affirm our Meetinghouse covenant. I will say a line, and then you can say it back to me. Love is the spirit of this Meetinghouse. This is our great covenant. To dwell together in peace. To seek the truth in love. And to help one another. Now, as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you joining us from home to light a candle wherever you are. And in this way, we can feel connected even while we are apart. So I invite Shar and Vicky to light our chalice this morning.
Chalice lighting, good morning, is by Laurel Wallace. It is called Determined Seed. As frozen earth holds the determined seed, this sacred place holds our weariness, our worry, our laughter, and our celebration. Let us bring seed and soul into the light of thought, the warmth of community, and the hope of love. Let us see together, hear together, love together. Let us worship.
Please join me now in a time of meditation and prayer. During the prayer or at any time during the service, you are welcome to light a silent candle at the table to the right of the pulpit, and there's a journal there to record your thoughts and prayers. After the prayer, we will sing together Spirit of Life, which is hymn number 123. And you can also find the words to this song printed on the purple laminated cards in your pews. If you don't have one in your pew, you can check the pews around you for that. Friday is International Transgender Day of Visibility. With so many anti-trans legislation efforts going on across the country, it is more important than ever to support our trans loved ones and to be loud and proud that our faith calls us to honor the inherent worth, dignity, and beauty of all people. So may our prayer this morning remind us of that calling. I offer you the words of UU minister, Mr. Barb Grieve. Blessed are the trailblazers who brought us this far and are still trailblazing, still celebrating. Blessed are the drag queens and kings who remind us to not take life too seriously. Blessed are the gender benders, non-binary, gender fluid, and third gender folk, those who challenge us to reframe our gender paradigm. Blessed are the young ones who present fearlessly from the start. Blessed are their parents who make space for freedom and love their children fiercely. Blessed are the siblings and relatives who educate, support, and love us as we are. Blessed are the genderqueer youth who are struggling and who persist. Blessed are the 90-year-olds just coming out, and those who have been out for decades. Blessed are those whose lives were cut too short. May their stories live on through us. Blessed are the survivors. May they keep on living. Blessed are the allies learning to be accomplices. Blessed are those gathered here today, witnessing, learning, celebrating. May we all commit to continue showing up, fighting for justice, celebrating all the genders in life. Amen.
Rearranging the furniture. Today's first reading is by Richard Schiffman and called Late March. Again, the trees remembered to make leaves. In the forest of their recollection, many birds returned singing. They sang. They sang. They sang because they forgave themselves the winter and all that remained still bitter. Yet, It was early spring when the days were touch and go, and a late snow could nip a shoot or freeze a fledgling in its nest. And where would we be then? But that's not the point. Do you think the magpie doesn't know that its chicks are at risk? Or the peach trees, their two frail blossoms? The new awakened bees, all that is incipient within us? We know, but we can't help ourselves any more than they can. Any more than the earth can stop hurtling through the night of its own absence. Must be something in the sap, the blood, a force like gravity, a trick called memory. You name it, or leave it nameless. That's better. How something returns and keeps on returning, through a gap, through a dimensional gate, through a tear in the veil, and there it is again, another spring, to woo loss into song.
Thank you. Would you please join me now in singing hymn number 83 in our gray hymnal, Winds Be Still. Number 83, Winds Be Still. Please rise as you are able. You may be seated.
The second reading is from Mary Oliver, Worm Moon. In March, the earth remembers its own name. Everywhere the plates of snow are cracking, the rivers begin to sing. In the sky, the winter stars are sliding away. New stars appear as, later, small blades of grain will shine in dark fields. And the name of every place is joyful. The season of curiosity is everlasting, and the hour for adventure never ends. But tonight, even the men who walked upon the moon are lying content by open windows, where the winds are sweeping over the fields, over the water, over the naked earth, into villages and lonely country houses and vast cities. Because it is spring, because once more the moon and the earth are eloping. A love match that will bring forth fantastic children who will learn to stand, walk, and finally run over the surface of earth, who will believe for years that everything is possible. Born of clay, how shall a man be holy? Born of water, how shall one visit the stars? Born of the seasons, how shall we live forever? Soon the child of the red-spotted newt, the eft, will enter his life from the tiny egg. On his delicate legs he will run through the valleys of moss, down to the leaf mold by the streams, where lately white snow lay upon the earth like a deep and lustrous blanket of moon fire. And probably everything is possible.
Thank you. Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing shared ministry of this congregation. As the choir rises to sing, I invite 4 random ushers to come forward to take our collection in person. If you're giving online, you can do so via PayPal or Venmo, and you can find that information on our website, uumh.org. On and off-site, your offerings will now be gratefully received. Right underneath there. Thank you. As I drove down Commercial Street this week, I noticed that it was lined with work trucks. Bricklayers, plumbers, carpenters, heating and cooling specialists, electricians, and a fair share of vans and pickup trucks that were unmarked. All in a row. You could barely get down the street. I used to think that the sound of spring was peepers. But after working in Provincetown for 10 years, I know that the sound of spring on the Outer Cape is actually hammers and saws. All around us, builders and business owners are doing the work of spring, repairing winter damage, turning over to new businesses, especially sprucing things up from the wear and tear of last season, getting their spaces ready for visitors. So if that is the work of spring in our larger community, what is the work of spring in our spiritual community? What is the work of spring within ourselves? Well, that is actually the topic for next week's service. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Next week will be April, and that will feel like a significant change from March. And the week after that will be Easter, and that will be joyous, and we'll go outside and have an Easter egg hunt on our lawn after the service, and it will feel, hopefully, like springtime. But today is still March. And while the end of March is officially spring on the calendar, New Englanders know to put it in a different category, whose name is almost spring. We know that in actual spring, our work will move out into the garden and our energy will ramp up with the lengthening days and warmer weather. We will be busy clearing leaves, moving house, spring cleaning, starting up our jobs again if we've been unemployed this winter. But it's not that time yet. We still have one last week of March, of almost spring. And I think it's harder to define the work of this time, this in-between season. The in-between seasons of the calendar and of our lives. In-between can feel like being stuck in the mud. For Vermonters, that's not just a metaphor, that is the actual situation. If you try to go anywhere in almost spring, and I know it arrives later up there. In-between can feel like treading water. In-between can feel like forever. But part of how we get through is to remind ourselves that it is not forever, that it is temporary, that it is a season. And seasons change. There are things we can do to come to terms with the season we are in. We can learn to like the smell of mud. I'm only half joking when I offer this as a spiritual practice. And I know that not all of us will learn to love the smell of wet earth, but there is something, maybe even just one tiny little thing, that each of us can learn to love about the season of not yet, the season of right now, even as we wish for it to be over. Maybe it's the smell of wood smoke or the warming breeze. When I was a chaplain at Mass General Hospital, faced with more heartache than I thought my own heart could bear, my bright spot was the bagels and cream cheese at the coffee kiosk on the first floor. I became a regular. I gained a lot of weight during that time, but I made it through. When my friend from that chaplaincy program was recently going through a hard time after the death of her mother, I had something delivered to her. Now, normally, I don't really support this, but in situations like this, DoorDash is amazing. All the way across the country, she opened the door to find a bagel and cream cheese. And she totally got the reference. She was a regular at that hospital kiosk, too. We experience some tough seasons in our lives. Some of them have very little good to say about them. But there is usually something. The care of a neighbor, the unexpected strength found in the muddy depths as we neared bottom, the poetry that comes through to us during our longest nights. It helps to learn to like the smell of mud, which is to say, to find the one good thing and hold on to it. There are things we can do. We can sit together while we wait. Waiting is easier when we are not alone. Mud season is easier when someone else comes along and helps us to pull or push our car out of the mush. Almost spring is easier when we are waiting for actual spring together. The other day I was watching a documentary on resilience, including the resiliency of relationships. And there was a young couple that stood out for me, Philip and Monica Pitts. They first met when they were out with friends at a bar, and it was love at first sight, and soon they married. Now, by the time the documentary crew catches up with them 5 years later, they have 4 beautiful children, but their marriage is in trouble. They're having trouble communicating. Monica is extremely critical of Phil, finding fault in almost everything he does. Phil disengages quickly, retreating into silences, which drives Monica crazy. Phil's job as a freelance record producer keeps him out a lot of nights. He's always at the studio and spending time with the bands that he records. One night, convinced that his marriage is ruined anyway, Phil is unfaithful. Regret comes in heavy waves with the morning light. Monica and Phil decide to enter couples counseling. At first, the outcome seems bleak. On the way to their first session, Phil takes a left instead of a right out of the train station, and they become lost. Monica does not let that one go. Phil also decides to stop for a donut, which makes Monica furious. They are already late, and Phil is making poor eating choices. She nearly goes through the roof when Phil, tired of listening to her litany of complaints, starts checking his BlackBerry during that first marriage counseling session. Oh, Phil. Their counselor is doubtful. But at the end of the session, both Phil and Monica commit to coming back and to putting the time in to work on their relationship. There's a certain space in my wife's heart that I don't have anymore, and I want to win that space back, says Phil. Over time, Phil works hard at slowly building up that trust that he has broken. Part of that is committing to staying in the conversation and not running away or shutting down. Monica agrees to a homework assignment from the couples counselor, a 3-hour date during which there is to be no complaining. Ooh, that's gonna be hard, she says. Sometimes I just get on a roll. But she does it. And it is the first romantic evening alone that they can remember since their wedding. It's hard to rebuild trust after it has been broken, their counselor says. The question is that breach of trust there as an open wound, or is it there as a scar? Now, it's funny that the counselor used this phrase because I just told our preaching class the other day that they should be sure that when they write their sermons, they are preaching from their scars and not from their wounds. That only after time has passed and healing has been done do their stories then become something that they can use as a tool for helping others. Now, I've always trusted in that phrase. And to hear it from the marriage counselor in the documentary, I was reminded it takes a long time for a wound to scar over. After the initial injury, it takes time in the between season before the skin smooths out. After we've done the hard work of naming what is wrong, or after we've let someone down and done the hard work of asking to be forgiven, there's a whole different set of work to do. The slow, plodding work of healing, of letting the wound scar over. That is when we must find the courage of patience. The same is true when we have found a wound not just in our relationships, but within ourselves. I think of the courageous patience it takes to overcome depression, to fight addiction, to grieve the death of a loved one, to build confidence, to battle cancer. It's all slow work. I told you once about what it's like to be out on my father's lobster boat. There are days heading out beyond the harbor that it's all about the catch. How many pounds of lobsters will we get today? Who will get the most keepers in one pot? But there are other days, if we haven't been out in a while, sometimes the low price of lobsters makes it not worth it. Sometimes life gets in the way, and lately, oysters take precedence. So there are other days when the goal is simply to bait the traps. If they have been sitting empty for a week, there's not much hope of catching lobsters. See, a lobster trap has a way out. Lobsters come in through the head and into the kitchen, that's where the food is, and then they crawl into the other side of the trap, which we call the bedroom or the parlor, where they get stuck. The way into both the kitchen and the parlor are funnels, which are hard to navigate in reverse. Only the baby lobsters can squeeze out of the escape hatches in the parlor, but in time, even the keeper lobsters can figure their way out of there. So on your first day out after a stretch away, it's not about the lobsters. It's about the bait. Stinky, smelly, disgusting bait. Frozen herring if I'm lucky, cod skins if I'm not. That stuff is gross. And it needs to go in every bait bag out there. The traps are heavy, even without lobsters, and it can be a long day with little payoff. But we do it because we know that the payoff comes later. We do it because if we want to catch the lobsters, we have to bait the traps. I can think of other times that are like those tiring mornings on the water. It's like being unemployed and sending out resume after resume, cover letter after cover letter, hoping that one of them will be the one. It's like jumping back into the dating world after a relationship has ended. All those first dates that go nowhere. It's like recovering from a surgery. And there are at least 5 of you that I know of right now recovering from surgery. And also a big surgery coming up on Tuesday, and another one next Wednesday. I am tracking all of you. My heart is an Excel spreadsheet. The cast, the boot, the sling, the endless physical therapy, I get it. It can be demoralizing, putting in all the work without any instant gratification. There are many days where putting in the work seems like more than we can bear, or not worth the effort. Doesn't feel like we were making any progress. But like rebuilding relationships, it takes time. You can't expect someone to forgive you right away once you have lost their trust. You just have to show up for them again and again. If you push too hard, too fast, you'll lose them. So you plod along, slowly building up trust again. It's good for us to remember that sometimes the spiritual task at hand is simply to bait the lobster traps with faith that the catch will follow. Sometimes the spiritual task at hand is to allow time and space for the wound to scar over. It's not fun. It's not rewarding, not right away anyway. And there is no definitive timeline for the payoff. But it is sacred work. To trust in the slow and steady task at hand, to work on our courageous patience, to heal our minds and bodies and relationships. Almost spring is like that. The work is to plod on, to persevere, to live through, to be patient without much reward yet. But there are things we can do. We can celebrate each small step forward. I don't know what those steps will be for each of you, but I am here to celebrate them with you if you want me to. Just as I celebrate each small step towards spring, each crocus opening its purple cup, each bud greening on the branch, each lengthening hour of light at the end of the day. And I remind myself, it's not here now, but spring will come. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It can be a topic of sharing at coffee hour today or with friends during the week. If you want to delve deeper into this conversation, we hope you can join us Tuesday at 5 on our Zoom coffee hour. Our question this week is, what is your current version of baiting traps? That is, what are you working towards even though the reward will come much later? Again, what is your current version of baiting traps? What are you working towards even though the reward will come much later? And if you need a link for Tuesday's coffee hour, ask Kate or one of us that are walking around a whole lot.
Thank you. And I'll end with these closing words. As you go out into the world or continue on with your day, may you look and listen for signs of the coming spring around you. Peepers, bird song, snowdrops. And may you look and listen for signs of the coming spring within you. Perseverance, gratitude, hope. Go in peace.